كلية الفقه الحنفي تقدم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده. أما بعد، سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا. Ameen. After praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending salutations upon His beloved Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we make dua that Allah ta'ala grants us His pleasure, grants us the best of this life and hereafter, and also grants us beneficial knowledge. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. So for today's session, we will be going through starting from the topic of things that invalidate the fast, the mufsidat of fasting as such. So we will going through the actions of one who is fasting. Will be divided into 4 categories. So we'll be going through these 4 categories, logical breakdown of the actions. Then we'll go through each of these categories. So the first is those actions which require a make-up, qada fast, as well as the expiation. So we'll talk about those actions. Then second category of those actions which require make-up but no expiation. And then we'll talk regarding those actions that require nothing and are not disliked. There's nothing due, not disliked, but there's obviously the reason we're discussing them is because there is a difference of opinion amongst other schools perhaps. So we will clarify what the stance of our school of thought is. Then lastly, the last category are those actions that require nothing yet are disliked. So they are disliked, so a person should refrain from these actions whilst in a state of fasting. Then there's going to be a few more things at the end, where if a person ends up in these states, then they still have to spend the rest of the day in a state where they are acting like they are fasting as such. So we will talk about these rulings inshallah, and that will bring us to the end of this session. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So now we are on things that invalidate the fast, which are called the mufsidat, breakers of the fast. So firstly, actions of one who is fasting are divided into 4 categories. So any action that a person does is divided into these 4 categories whilst the person is fasting. Number 1 is those that, meaning those actions that require a make-up as well as expiation. So there'll be 2 things necessary. The fast will break, so therefore there'll be a qada, make-up necessary, as well as a kafara, expiation necessary. That's number 1. That's the most severe ruling. Number 2, a slightly lighter ruling, those actions that require a make-up, a qada, because of fast breaks, but without expiation, there'll be no kafara due. And 3 are those actions that require nothing and are not even disliked, are perfectly fine. And lastly, number 4 are those that require nothing yet are disliked. It's makruh to do this whilst fasting. So these are 4 actions here mentioned, which the actions, 4 categories you can say, the actions of a person in a state of fasting are divided into. So now firstly, starting off with number 1, those that require a make-up as well as expiation. So if one eats, that's the one eats or drinks something of nutritional value, i.e. something customarily eaten, something that you normally would eat, or something for medicinal purposes, So the eating and drinking is qualified with these. Or if one has sexual intercourse in either of the two passages, meaning the front or rear, meaning in the rear passage, on purpose, meaning they do it not forgetfully, meaning they didn't forget that they were fasting. They actually knew that they were fasting, so they did it on purpose. Then he must make up the fast as well as perform expiation. So this is the most severe ruling found for this type of breaking. A person eats or drinks or has sexual intercourse, in essence breaks their fast, and all of this was done on purpose. Meaning on purpose means not just the sexual intercourse, but the eating and the drinking was also done in purpose. So if a person ate something but they just didn't remember that they were fasting, they had no clue, they didn't remember they were fasting, then that fast won't break. But as soon as they remember, they must stop. And if there's something in their mouth, they must take it out. Likewise with everything else, drinking or sexual intercourse, same ruling applies, which the on purpose is explaining to us. So the thing is that the fast will break if the person does these things on purpose, violates the fast. And an expiation, a kafara, will be due. Obviously they will be sinful as well, so they must do tawbah. That's a separate matter. Now what's the expiation? The expiation is, number one, which is to free a slave. That's the first thing a person must do, free a slave. Now if he does not have one, doesn't have a slave, meaning normally nowadays, where are you going to find a slave to buy, to free? So there aren't really slaves around nowadays, so you're not going to be able to do this one. So if he doesn't have one, then the next thing you go to is he must fast 2 consecutive months. So this is a hierarchy. If you can't do number 1, then you do number 2, which is fast 2 consecutive months. So you do 60 days of fasting here. Now, it's important that it's consecutive. You can't have a break in between. So you must make sure that it's not like close to Ramadan or anything like that. Obviously, if it's a woman that's fasting, then doing this, then she's obviously excused during the days of her menstrual cycle. So when the menstrual cycle starts, then those days for which her menstrual cycle lasts, that will not break the consecutiveness. But as soon as she becomes pure, she must restart fasting consecutively, so then the consecutiveness does not break. So yeah, also to make sure that the Eid doesn't come in between. So if Eid comes in between as well, that consecutiveness will break. So you just have to plan it. You have to plan it to see where are these 60 days I can find to be able to do this. I mean, you can do this in the winter months as well, where the days would be shorter, so it would be easier. But 2 months consecutive fasting a person must do. That's number 2. Now, if he is genuinely unable, then he must feed 60 poor people. So that's the third tier, the third step you go to if you can't do the above 2 that we mentioned. So 60 poor people, how much do you feed them? So a half sa', which is 2.2 kg of wheat, or give its equivalent monetary value to each person. This is in essence the same amount that you give in Sadaqatul Fitr. So whatever the Sadaqatul Fitr is in your area, in your masjid, you just go according to that. Most big charities nowadays, they all have this measure. They already have this, you can select an option there that, pay kafara, pay the sadaqah or fitr, or you pay the kafara, and then they will work it out all for you, how much you owe, and then you give that much. So yeah, going by those reliable charities, in terms of their calculation is fine, but obviously for yourselves, you need to know what this is and the fiqh behind it. So that is that. Then, if, however, he does have one of the above, namely, meaning if he does one of the above, namely if he eats, drinks, or has sexual intercourse out of forgetfulness. Like I explained, forgetfulness means that they just forgot that they were fasting. Not that they forgot that, eating breaks the fast, or sexual intercourse breaks the fast. They didn't remember that. The ruling, forgetting the ruling, that's not an excuse. Okay? So if a person actually genuinely forgot that they're fasting, then he neither has to make up the fast nor perform expiation. That's because the fast doesn't break. So the fast will not break. That fast will be intact. That forgetfulness will be excused, because this is from the hadith, that the forgetfulness from my ummah is removed in this way. So therefore a person is not accountable for this, so their fast will continue. Now, moving on, those acts that require a makeup without expiation. So that's our second category. So we see that the use of a suppository. Now, it does mention use of suppository, and it may even mention, I think, in your footnotes, the old research here, according to the books of fiqh. Yes, it does mention. So it mentions regarding how both the vagina and the anus are deemed passageways into the body, meaning that if something foreign was entered into either of the passageways, either the vagina or the anus, like a suppository or some sort of medication or something, then if it goes as far in as a suppository would go, then the fast will break. A mere small insertion won't break the fast, but if it goes as far as the enema is given, a suppository is put there, a medication is put there for that reason, then the fast will break. But the later research shows that there is the reason why the scholars, the jurists mention this, either front passage, whether it's the male urethra or the female, the vagina. They understood that there is a link between the front private part and the internal organs like the intestines and everything else. So they understood this to be a cavity of consequence, whereby if something is placed there, it will break the fast. But research, obviously, biology shows that there is no link between the front passage and the jawf, we call it, the stomach, the intestines, the larger or the smaller intestine. There's no connection there. So the connection is only with the back passage. So if you insert something into the back passage, this will break the fast, as far as the suppository goes. But if meaning as far up as the suppository goes. But if a person was to, let's say a person had a smear test or some sort of examination in the front passage, then this will not break the fast, unlike what some fatwas will mention. But remember, why the fatwas mention that is because the fiqh books do mention the fast will break, because the scholars understood that there was a connection. But now that they understand that there's no connection, we can rule that if those scholars knew that there is no connection, they would rule like us. They would say that the fast doesn't break, because the point was that they understood that this will be a cavity of consequence. So let's say the fatwa nowadays, we can understand that the front passage will not, inserting something into the front passage will not break the fast, because it's not a cavity of consequence. So hopefully this is understood well. You can find this in the works of later scholars, the likes of Mufti Rafi Uthmani, as well as translated into English by Mufti Zubair Bat of Al-Qalam. I'm sure that there are articles of his you can download and you can read, and he explains a bit more in detail this ruling that I am mentioning. Moving on with those actions which require make-up, a qada, but no expiation. We're on the second one. So something not normally eaten, no use for medicinal purposes, like dirt reaching the body cavity. So if there's a mouth was open and the dust went in, dirt went in, so something, it went in and you swallowed it, yes? So it reached the body cavity, means it reached the throat. The cavity is a consequence. It reached the throat, or it reached inside further than that, the stomach, or anything. Then what happens? The fast will break, the qada will be necessary, so, but no expiation would be necessary. So the same thing applies to anything else, like a pebble a person swallowed, or a person swallowed some mud or some soil or whatever else it may be, something which is not normally eaten. Okay, so the fast will break because you still swallowed something, you still took something in, but there will be no kafara because this is not something which normally would be eaten. It's not edible. Then the third one, accidentally swallowing water whilst rinsing the mouth. So because we're allowed to rinse the mouth in wudu or in ghusl, we're allowed to rinse the mouth, but if you obviously you're not meant to not meant to gargle or anything, so you have to take extra caution. But if a person was doing so and they just all of a sudden just, that water went in and he went down the throat, so the fast will break. But because it was done accidentally, doing something you are allowed to do, which is rinsing the mouth during wudu or something, so then there will be no expiation, no kafara due. So this is the ruling over here. Moving on, being coerced to break one's fast. So if somebody was forced to break the fast, then that fast will require a makeup but no expiation. The next one, it says eating, even if intentionally, in the daytime for a fast in which the person did not make the intention before Fajr. So before Fajr, before the time where the ideal time, you can say, where a person should have made the intention, the Subh Sadiq, before that they didn't make an intention. It was after Subh Sadiq where they made an intention, before this fast, for the Fard fast, where it would be fine to do so, or for a Nafil fast if it was. But this one specifically is talking about Ramadan because we're talking about kafara and qada. So let's say a person made an intention for fasting after, at Fajr time, for example, or beyond Fajr time, after Fajr time, but before Dahwa Kubra. So now if the person made that intention then, and then they intentionally ate that day, then there will be no kafara, there will only be qada. The reason for this one is because the kafara, which is the extreme penalty, it gets removed. There's a rule that it's removed when there is a doubt. Whenever there's a doubt created, it gets removed. So here a doubt creates because the other schools, the of fiqh, they say that if you make an intention after Fajr, that fast doesn't count. So because they say that, this creates doubt when a person made an intention after Fajr whether your fast counted or not. So because it creates that doubt is sufficient enough that if you ate intentionally, we could say, though, because according to the other schools, your fast didn't even start, your fast didn't even count, so you eating now is not really breaking the fast. So that's the doubt that will remove this kafara, this expiation, but obviously there will still be a qada due because you haven't fasted today. So that is that. Obviously, according to our school, you shouldn't be breaking that fast because for us, that fast does count. But because the kafara, it follows a separate ruling, which is that doubts remove kafara. So that's a separate thing that governs that. Then moving on, ejaculation due to touching or kissing. So if a person did no penetration, previously there was penetration happening in the front or back passage, that required kafara. But here there is no penetration. There's touching, there's kissing or anything like that happening, because of which ejaculation takes place. So this will necessitate qada, no kafara. Likewise, anything like, caressing or anything like that will all make the qada necessary. No kafara. Or if a person was masturbating or something like that, which should person obviously, all of these things person shouldn't be doing. But if a person did do that, then it will necessitate a qada, but no kafara. Next one, someone pouring water into the body cavity of a sleeping person. So i.e. the sleeping person must make up the day without expiation. So what it means is, if you were sleeping, for instance, and whilst you were sleeping, mouth was a little bit open, so somebody played a prank on you and poured some water in, because of which you swallowed it, and then you told them, I was fasting, what did you do? So they said, sorry, whatever, they were playing a prank, but because you ingested that water, it was forced in essence, it was involuntary. So therefore there will be no kafara due, but there will be no expiation, but there will be a qada. So the fast would have broken. And or they put it through the nose. That's what it means by body cavity. So they got it into your throat somehow. Then next one is self-induced vomiting, meaning you made yourself vomit purposefully a mouthful or more. So if a person made themselves vomit, if it was a mouthful and you made yourself vomit, or more than that, then this will necessitate qada, but no kafara. And if the point is, if the vomit comes out itself, even if it was a mouthful, nothing happens, right? But if you made yourself vomit, if it was a mouthful, then the fast will break. If it was less than a mouthful, fast will not break. What makes what makes it mouthful is if you were trying to control it, but you couldn't control it, meaning control it coming out of your mouth, unless you really press down and really hold down. So you couldn't, something which you can't, the vomit that you can't hold into your mouth without like a lot of force, this is going to be counted as full mouth. Okay, so a mouthful would be where you cannot control it and keep it in the mouth. Or obviously, if the vomit came out, there's one more scenario left here, which is that if the vomit occurred, even if it was naturally it occurred, and it was a mouthful or more, it happened mouthful or more, and then purposefully a person swallowed it, right? So it was coming out, it was mouthful or more, and a person, he managed to swallow that. So if they didn't swallow it, they would have come out. That's the point, that is a mouthful. So by re-swallowing it, then again the same thing will apply. There will be a qada due, the fast will break, but there will be no expiation, because this is not something that a person would normally eat or swallow. So that's why there will be no kafara, but there will be a qada fast due here. Obviously, if a person, goes without saying, purposefully vomited, full mouthful, and then swallowed it, then because they purposefully vomited anyway, it would have been fast broken, regardless of them swallowing back or not, if it's a mouthful. So hopefully that covers all the rulings of that. Now, just one ruling that it does mention there in your footnotes, that when we're talking about ejaculating due to touching and kissing, but there's actually something physically happening there. If a person was just thinking, wasn't touching themselves even, right? Just thinking or looking, in fact, at something that they shouldn't be looking at, or they had a wet dream, then this will not invalidate the fast. The fast will be intact. It will be fine. Meaning the fast will be fine. Obviously what they're doing, especially if they're looking and thinking, the person will be separately sinful for. That's a different matter. Moving on, those that require nothing and are not disliked, meaning those actions which require nothing to be done. There's maybe some things need to be just clarified. That's why he's mentioning this. So for example, it mentions the first one is blood cupping, hijama. So if a person is getting cupping done, then nothing happens, is not disliked even. Or drawing blood. So if you went for a blood test and they drew blood out, nothing happens, as long as it does not weaken him. As long as it doesn't weaken the person, then it would be fine. If it weakens the person, then it would be disliked. So you know that you may fall weak, because of which you may need to break the fast. Then you shouldn't be doing this during the fasting day, during the fasting time. Moving on, using the toothstick, siwak. So using the miswak, even if used at the end of the day, rather it is sunnah. So using the miswak, using the siwak is perfectly fine. You can use it as many times as you want during the day, even towards the end. Because remember, the reason some people say that you shouldn't be using it is because they say that the bad, the smell of the mouth, you shouldn't be taking it away. But that's not correct. The hadith which mentions regarding the smell that comes out of a person is the smell that comes from the inside of the stomach, which is empty, because of which it gives the smell. Now that smell, which is called the khaluf, which Allah Ta'ala loves, is not a smell which is not the smell that comes from the mouth. Okay, that smell from the mouth you can get rid of using the siwak, no problem. Rinsing the mouth or the nose without any water proceeding down the throat. So if you rinse the mouth, rinse the nose, perfectly fine, nothing wrong with it, as long as there's no water that goes down the throat. And lastly, it mentions placing a wet garment on one's body or taking a bath due to heat. So if you take a wet garment and you put it on your body, it's too hot, or you take a wet towel or something, put it on your head because you want to cool down, perfectly fine. Likewise, taking a shower, taking a bath, perfectly fine. Somebody may say that, but you're smelling all of that, you're taking in all of that steam. If it's a really hot bath, that's fine. Obviously, you shouldn't stay there purposefully and sniffing all the steam, but taking a shower is fine, it's allowed, nothing wrong with it. These are the rulings, and we'll end here. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Those that require nothing yet are disliked. So these kind of actions that are disliked whilst the person is fasting. If one tastes some food or chews on it without swallowing, so you're chewing on that food without swallowing, or you taste that food, then without a valid excuse. So without a valid excuse means that in the times before there was no blenders. So in order to feed the baby, you needed somebody to make the food smaller, chew the food, because you can't do anything else to it. You can break it as much as you want, but you can't really make it really small to be able to feed the baby, because the baby doesn't have any teeth to be able to chew anything. So what the mother would do, she would take the food, chew it first, break it down, and then give that morsel to the child. Might sound a bit gross to some people nowadays, but that's how they did it. So this was a valid excuse for the mother, so this would not make it disliked. Likewise, if a woman was married to a man who was quite aggressive, and she felt as though she needs to taste the food before she serves it to him. So if she tasted the food but never ingested it, just taste it and then maybe you spit it out, then again this would be a valid excuse and would not be disliked. So just tasting something, not ingesting it. If you ingest it, there's going to be problems. Obviously the fast will break. So, or that's that one action. It says, or if one kisses his spouse while not feeling secure from ejaculation or intercourse, it is disliked. So if a person kisses their partner, whichever way it is, husband, wife, they kiss each other whilst they are not safe, meaning from it leading, that kissing leading to further things, meaning ejaculation or sexual intercourse, they're not secure from that, they don't think that, meaning they think that it might lead to that, then it will be disliked. If, however, one feels secure from engaging in sexual intercourse or from ejaculation due to the kissing, it is not disliked. So if a person kisses their wife and they know that it's not going to lead to anything further, they're secure, they're safe about this, then it will not be disliked for them to kiss. But when we're talking about kissing, we're not talking about mouth to mouth. We're not kissing the mouth to the mouth. We're kissing either the cheek or anywhere else, the hand, the forehead, anything else, the head, not the mouth. Because if you kiss the mouth, there's risk that you swap saliva. Now, if you swap saliva and you ingest saliva, then there will be problems. As Ibn Abdin mentions, that there will be qada as well as kafara. They will be both due, because a person has swallowed something which in this kind of a thing is desired, okay, is something a person would like. So this will necessitate qada as well as kafara. So that's a person should definitely stay away from. The following actions are recommended, mustahab, for the one fasting. To have the pre-dawn meal, suhoor, due to the blessing therein, even if only a sip of water. So a person should partake in the pre-dawn meal, in the suhoor, because Rasulullah ﷺ mentioned that there is barakah in it, and he encouraged the Sahaba radiallahu anhu quite a bit to actually take this pre-dawn meal. So we should eat this, we should do this. Second one is to delay it. So to delay it until shortly before Fajr. So you try to eat more closer, rather than eating the suhoor before sleep. You wake up for it, you pray, you do it. So when it says delay, you don't delay too much. So yet while being certain not to swallow anything after Fajr enters. So when it says delay, some people think that you delay all the way to the end. No. What it means is that you're not eating the suhoor too early in the night. You're delaying it, means you're doing the suhoor closer to the time of Fajr. So yeah, so that's that. Then to hasten in breaking one's fast unless it is cloudy day. If it's a cloudy day, i.e. one must be certain that Maghrib has indeed entered. If it's a cloudy day, you can't see the sun setting, then if you don't eat, you don't break the fast until you are sure that the sun has set. But if it's a clear sky and you know the sun has set, then you break the fast immediately once the sun has set. You don't delay in doing this. So these are all recommended actions a person should adhere to. The following actions during the day necessitate withholding, which we call imsak. A person stays in a state of fasting, meaning staying away from eating, drinking, and cohabitating with their spouse. So they stay away from these actions, even though their fast doesn't count. So the following actions would necessitate withholding from anything that would vitiate the fast. So anything that would break the fast, you still have to stay away from that. So in essence, you have to stay in this state of fasting, though your fast doesn't count. So that you do that for the remainder of that day, i.e. it is mandatory, wajib, to do so. Meaning it's wajib for a person to stay in this state. So a person can't think that I will revoke my fast, now I might as well eat. No. You still have to venerate the day. That day demands, from a Sharia angle, demands that these actions should not take place in those days. So don't violate further by the sanctity of the day by doing more the things that you are not meant to do on that day. So this is what we call imsak, staying away from those actions even though the fast is not counted. So this is for if one breaks the fast, whether accidental, on purpose, or under coercion. So if the fast broke because of these reasons, then meaning accidentally you swallowed water whilst remembering that I am fasting, the fast will break. Now for the remainder of the day, you're going to have to still stay in a state of fasting. The fast won't count. You're going to have to do qada, no kafara, because accidentally, I'm sure we understand. If you did it by purpose, then there'll be qada and kafara. And if under coercion, there'll be qada, but no kafara. But the point is that the person will have to stay in this state of imsak. The next one is if a traveler arrives to his place of residence and was not fasting on his journey. Since if he were fasting, then he must remain fasting a full try. Meaning even more so, the person should have stayed in the state of fasting. If they were fasting, they would have remained in the state of fasting by coming home even more so, because the journey was the one that would have allowed the person not to have fasted. So if the person was a traveler and during the travel they weren't fasting, but then they came back home then during the daytime, then they must stay the remainder of that day in a state of fasting, though they started the day not fasting. Now, just to finish this ruling, obviously it's very important that they were a traveler at the beginning of the day, meaning at the time of Subh Sadiq. So this is important, that this must have happened. I mean, this ruling will come later, and I think we'll discuss it further there. Moving on, if a woman in menstruation or postnatal bleeding becomes pure, so if a woman was during the day, let's say at 10 a.m., they finished their menstrual cycle finished, so the remainder of that day, they will have to stay in imsak, meaning they will not eat or drink. Whilst they were menstruating, they could have eaten as much as they wanted to, they could have done any of that, but now they've finished their menstruation or the postnatal bleeding, the nifas, then they will stay in this state of imsak for the remainder of that day. If incidentally, the other way around, if she was fasting at the beginning of the day, like normal, and then during the day, the menstruation came, now she must eat, because she's not allowed to fast whilst she is in hayd, whilst she is menstruating. So she must break the fast now. Okay, she can't, because sometimes logically somebody will think, I already started the day fasting. So if I already started the day fasting, I'm going to carry on fasting for the remainder of the day. I'm going to stay in the state of fasting. Somebody might think, no, you're not allowed to do that, because there you are resembling a fasting person whilst in a state which is not allowed for you to fast in. So that is not allowed. So a person should and must eat. Is wajib, in fact, for a person to eat during that, meaning, or at least not to be fasting with an intention that I'm continuing my fast. That is important. Now, moving on, if a non-Muslim embraces Islam. So if a non-Muslim embraces Islam, then during the day, the remainder of that day, they will stay in the state of fasting. And lastly, or if a child becomes an adult by puberty or by age. So obviously by puberty for a boy, it will be by ejaculation, a wet dream, and for a girl, it will be by menstruation. And if it's by age, then it will be at the age of, for boys and girls, it's at 15 lunar years. So this is 14 years and 7 months in terms of the solar years, if we're counting the normal years. So by age, this person will become now an adult, and they will have to then stay in the state of fasting, in this imsak state for the remainder of that day. Now, the difference in these 5 that we've mentioned is the first 3 cases require a makeup. So the person who is the one who breaks the fast, the traveler who arrives home, and the woman in menstruation or postnatal, they will have to do qada later, yes? But the last 2, the non-Muslim who embraces Islam, or the child who becomes an adult, they do not have to do any qada. There's no qada for them for that particular day. Okay, because they were not mukallaf, their fast wasn't on them, they were not ahl from the first place. But the others, they just had a temporary, allowance. There was a temporary, a blockage for them. Whereas they are Muslim, they are ahl, they are actually somebody eligible. So this is why the first 3 will have to make up for their fast. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Now, to summarize, what we went through today are the things that invalidate the fast, the mufsidat we went through, right? So we started off with those actions which require a expiation. So kafara is due. Obviously the qada will also be due. So you have qada and kafara due. So this is when a person eats and drinks, breaking their fast, or so eats and drinks without a valid reason, in essence, or they have sexual relations in either of the front or the rear passage. Again, this is whilst remembering, whilst the person knows that they were fasting. So then there's expiation due. And the expiation we went through is either freeing a slave, which nowadays is not going to be possible. So you've got 2 months of consecutive fasting to do. And We went through certain rulings regarding this. And then if a person is genuine, unable to do this, then they will they will feed 60 poor people, equivalent to the Sadaqatul Fitr amount, the half a sa' of wheat to each person. Right, so then we went through the actions that will break a person's fast. So qada will be due, but no kafara. So this is eating, swallowing something whilst remembering. So all of the other things that would break the person's fast, but will not necessitate a kafara, will still break the fast and necessitate so where the crime, in essence, the violation, is lesser in degree to the ones that we prayed before, if you remember, in terms of concept-wise. Then we went through those actions which require nothing. There's no qada, no kafara due, and it's not even disliked. So like hijama, using the miswak, rinsing mouth and nose, and placing something wet on the body, or even taking a shower or something like that. These are all perfectly fine. Then we went through those actions which are disliked. Okay, it won't break the fast, won't do anything, but it's still disliked. So chewing something without swallowing it. So if we go according to that, then perhaps the toothbrushing with toothpaste. If you go according to this, chewing something without swallowing is still makruh. So the same kind of concept would apply to that. Some scholars do have a difference of opinion there regarding toothpaste and toothbrush, because it doesn't really get ingested, is not swallowed. But yeah, a person should refrain from it because of a difference of opinion. There's no need for it as such. A person, if they were to brush their teeth after iftar and also before suhoor, then that would be fine. And during the day using the miswak. So these are actions that we went through. There were other things as well that we went through that would be disliked. Then lastly, we went through those people who would have to do imsak for the remainder of their day, though the fast will not count. Okay, so the person who broke their fast, the traveler who arrives home, woman who finishes a menstrual cycle or the postnatal bleeding, non-Muslim who embraces Islam, and a child who becomes an adult, and the difference we prayed regarding them too.